This is The Real Gig with Bret Alexander. The return of Paul Smith.
Here we
go. It's overdue. Things were getting a little too normal around here.
Well, we need to shake it up again.
Every once in a while, you need that. You need to kind of I need Dad has to come back in and
just take a look.
Pull
at
everybody back in line.
Fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes. What's going on? So that's what we're doing today. What I wanted to do today was I just kind of wanted to do 2 episodes, this being the first of the 2, of kind of about like sort of following your passion or following your dreams. And, this business that we're in, it would be a lot easier if my dream was to be in customer service or something like that. You know what I mean? It was like there's a much clearer path to beginning of career to retirement. Right. Or if I, whatever.
Very defined things.
This path. There is nothing but friggin' wilderness.
It is non-linear.
It is non-linear. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's very not linear. Very not linear.
Yeah.
Always surprises you.
Yeah, it always does. Well, anyway, just to get it started, I got the idea for a podcast to do. Not that that's that unique of an idea, but we haven't done one like this before.
Yeah.
So up to now, I wanted to do kind of that, follow your passion, kind of follow your dreams, kind of podcast, and the ups and the downs, and what maybe you wished you did differently, or what you wished, or what you think you did right, that kind of stuff along the ways, because we've been at this for a long time. Approaching 40 years. Yeah. Approaching.
That is
not
crazy.
There yet, but that's crazy.
Very close.
And lots of twists and turns along the way. But anyway, I'll start with this. I remember about 10 years ago, who's I saw this YouTube video, and it was from that conservative talk show YouTube channel, PragerU,
okay,
or whatever it was.
Okay.
And they had the narrator was the Dirty Jobs guy.
Okay. Yep.
Mike Rao.
Yes, Mike. Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Mike, and they did this whole thing about like why you shouldn't follow your passion, And at the time, I kind of took it, and he has this whole long explanation. And he used the example of somebody that owns a sewage business or something like that. This guy became incredibly successful owning the sewage business. He saw everybody go this way. He went this way, and he became real successful with the sewage business. He said, and eventually, I got passionate about other people's crap. You know what I mean?
Right.
and at the time. Like my grandfather owned a sewage business, what I mean? He did, so that was his business, my namesake, and he, and that's what he did, until he had health problems, even younger than me, but he owned one of those businesses, and honestly, he loved it. Had the truck, and he had, did like a backhoe out in the yard, that he went and dug out, anyway, but he ran these businesses, and, he really enjoyed it, after a while. I mean, so I sort of related to what the guy was saying, but but at the same time, the message of that particular video to me kind of pissed me off a little bit, because I'm like, I just felt like he was saying, well, like if everybody followed your advice, John Lennon would have been a plumber.
Right on.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And there are just some people out there that are capable,
right,
and are capable of doing this, doing a job like this job, and making a decent go of it. And it's been interesting over time for me, to interview our friends and people, and everybody's a little bit different as to, there's this great Charlie Munger quote, was kind of Warren Buffett's right hand man, And he said, show me, what was the word? Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Which I thought really brilliant, because so that's the way with this career. It's like, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I've just kind of like, I think there's more to the narrative than, well, college is a waste of time. And doing a career in the arts is a waste of time and the trades are all good. Of course, yes, with things changing and the way the world's changing and AI, all this, you know,
The trades are good.
trades are good.
The trades are good.
Yeah, the trades are good, and trades were good before, of course.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
I mean, you need these people, and I love it. But I just think, like I always tell you, the Big Short quote that I love so much is was at the beginning of the movie The Big Short. He said, you know, the truth is like poetry, and everybody hates fucking poetry.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right on.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's like,
So.
yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It takes looking and in the case of poetry, paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, they both. You have to pay attention.
And there's all these subtleties. You know, the truth is not just, okay, this is the answer. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
Right.
kind of like, we're going to find the answer along the way. And that answer is going to be different for other people.
Yeah.
Different people.
I mean, that from that viewpoint, I think it's good advice for many people. Like, you don't necessarily, everybody does not need to go to a residential 4-year liberal arts college. Everybody does not need to do that. Many people can really benefit from that experience, but you grow as you grow in different ways and you grow in different situations. But what's unfortunate about that viewpoint of like, here's a path that is going to be successful, I guess it's what your definition of success is, but if we want to look at the truth, there's a huge spectrum of people that, you know, are conceived every minute.
Sure.
And that all those people have this wide range of things that do not at all fit into any category.
Right.
And especially in the first year, you really don't. And, you know, the thing about like follow your dreams, I don't think in its best interpretation isn't follow your folly.
Yeah.
You know, if your dream is a folly, if your dream is not rooted in reality of what you could do to do it, or if you know, what
ski shop in Death Valley or something like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just unfortunate because there are people that always will, to the nth degree, pursue their passion because they have to, and those artsy people, they will never do anything else. But for people that have tendencies to be successful and bring joy and blah, 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 blah in the arts to people, that, let's say they're kind of on the fence or something like that, you know, you can do both now, and you will be able to do both.
Sure.
But yeah, that's the problem with an absolute viewpoint. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do, within your ability to do it, you know?
Right. And make it, I mean, if you want it to be sustainable, or you want it to be a hobby, or you want it to be something more, you know, I remember, I mean, you're talking and that was very good, you know, but like you were talking and I was like 3 thoughts came into my head of different, you know, different things that I was thinking of. The one was, you know, you kind of said it the same way. Show me the incentive. I'll show you the outcome. You know, you kind of said that in so many ways. And the other one I remember, like Jim Carrey saying, well, one time he said, well, you know, it is also true that you can fail at what you suck at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
You can also fail at what you suck at.
Yeah.
So,
or don't like.
Or don't
enhance your life.
Right.
Or is a grind and it's making you crazy.
Yeah, right, making you crazy. And, you know, so there's sides of that. I mean, the problem is you start having a conversation like this and then you say, well, you know, we need, I mean, obviously, you know, my dad had a trade, you know, I mean, my grandfather had a trade. I'm not putting down tradesmen. I'm not putting down colleges or their side. I'm just saying truth is like poetry. Yeah. Some people, obviously, you need training to do this or training to do this. You need a certain kind of headspace to be in the arts to try to make that some sort of sustainable living. And there's this big wide swath of how you can do that.
Right.
And like you say, some people are on the spectrum of that, of like, well, how much do I love this?
Right.
You know, I remember like when you came in to the Badleys fold, and we've had that conversation. when I came in before you, I mean, I was playing with my band from home, you know, with Ronnie and Benji and Curtis and Paula before that, and you know, and all those people. I remember the Badleys thing started to get pretty serious, and it became like to the point where I couldn't play with my hometown friends.
Right on.
And play with them.
Right on.
You know, I mean, it was just getting where I was going to have to start turning down things, and
yeah.
So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to go with the guys that want to do things, take it a little farther.
Oh, right.
Not a little farther. We wanted to get a record deal,
right.
And
exactly.
all those kind of things, and ultimately we did. So I had to, leave my best friends.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
right.
but that was like much harder of a decision than deciding to take this job or come
right.
here. Any of that. That wasn't.
Right. Right.
That was a harder decision to.
Right.
Not, to kind of like, okay, I'm going to focus on this thing that maybe wants to go a little farther. Then, and I just remember Benji saying, like when we were having the conversation, he said, well, he said, I remember him saying, I love to play. I love music. I love playing guitar. I love doing this. He said, but I also love to fish.
Right on.
And
so doesn't want to give up that thing. Doesn't want,
Yeah, so
and you're like, I love to fish too, but I really need to make this happen.
Yeah, but but I can give up fishing.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Right. I like to fish too, but I can give up that.
Right.
I can give up stability and sanity and all that kind of stuff to do this.
Right. Exactly.
For the chance to do this.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And anyhow, so.
Well, I think that what is earlier comment a few lines back, you were saying something about, kind of like the wherewithal, to do it. And, a lot of people are pretty tough and can ride things out. But the arts is just this big matzo ball of unknown out there. And there's some art professions where you can be hot 1 second and really not hot the next.
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstances. And there are some in the arts that you can actually make a living and really just do your thing.
Yeah.
If it is intentioned and you have a culture around your music.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you'll call that a success. But what that requires is uncomfortable perseverance. It's uncomfortable a lot. And the reward payoff is much bigger than being uncomfortable. It'd be really cool to just have somebody pick you up in a car, if you're up to a VP position in a company and blah, 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 and that's part of the gig.
Yeah.
That in that level, the comfort needs to offset what the sharkiness of running large businesses is.
Yeah.
But the arts is a whole universe unto itself, complete with the people and the feelings and the expressions of the feelings all in one thing. But it's very difficult to maintain that, or maybe even say yes to doing it seriously. I remember thinking like, I think it was kind of maybe around the Amazing Grace period or something when we just started recording in your basement, and I just remember thinking, man, we're sitting here in the basement and there's no record deal, the label's gone, blah, blah, blah. I just would never, what a talk about college and life experience and things that you can't explain to people in a slideshow what they are and what they do to you and mean to you. And, every time, as an anecdote, like every time we'd come off the road, like our road manager, Scott, we talk about it, periodically. It's like, he's like, I can't really tell jokes around like folks at home or at parties that are polite and everything. And it's not that, if it is dudes in a rock band, hilarity ensues.
Sure.
But it's always in the intention of having fun and getting through all the things. And it's a little nutty if you're driving in a van for like 5 hours and then you have to go do 3 things and then you have to play and they have to blah, blah, blah. And no one's complaining. But it takes a level of uncomfortability, I guess, that just most folks are not happy with in their day to day. And I don't know. There's a myriad of reasons. I mean, I know all the reasons why the people that we love or look up to and what we've like learned. It's, you know, it's honorable to have pursued, you know, all these things over the years. I think that do have a specific intention, like do have a mantra to them. It's not just doing it. It's not just playing a guitar, you know? So, I don't know. I think it's like you said about your thing with the truth. The truth is sharp and it's layered.
Sure.
And that's the thing that people are uncomfortable with is the layers. Yeah. And everybody is uncomfortable with something like that. Like I hate paperwork. I'm terrible. I'm terrible, terrible. You know, and it piles up and it's layers of obscure things that need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
But that's how it is. Like, you know, I started thinking about like, well, okay, what am I afraid of this week?
Yeah. Really?
What am I afraid of this week that I can get over a hump? And I know physically it's not even running a mile. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to break anything going through those papers, but like, you know, that's in my brain. That's my El Guapo.
You ask yourself that.
Yeah.
Oh,
what am I
cool.
afraid of this week? Because I'm not going to get to the point where I feel like everything's going, what we're doing musically and everything you're doing in your life, unless I address the actual things, all the things. Because like musicians, you know, I just saw like a little, I was telling you about the other day, the producer of Kiss Destroyer and The Wall.
Bob Ezrin.
Bob Ezrin. And I saw a Bob Ezrin interview, and you know, this is a master of craft, from Alice Cooper to The Wall, you know, and many, many, many things. But he was like, you know, it is adolescence, you know, and adolescence in the form of, and yes, actual behavior sometimes, but adolescence in the pure form of you are not fully developed. You know, if you're a 13-year-old, your brain's not cooked till you're 25, 26 years old. And that mindset of possibilities. So that's what the arts is, mindset of possibilities. How do I, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's a little bit of a miracle to try to be in that world consistently. Some people, for them, it's okay to go, if you're a musician and you play like some wedding gigs, we've all played wedding gigs.
Sure.
You know, but that's your level of like, that's your threshold of pain. You're like, I like the extra money and I don't want to pack up equipment and set it up. You know, I can do that like twice a month. I get it, you know.
I like, threshold of pain. That's a good way of putting it. But it's like the analogy I thought of while you were talking is like Western expansion. You know, the wagon train's going out, you know, and you got the family. I don't know if you saw that show, 1883, or
no.
It was kind of a Yellowstone spin-off, and they had this. I don't know if they were German or, you know, something like that. This family, and they had all this stuff, and you know, they get out so far, and you know, the animals are wearing down, and they need. The guy's hauling a piano or something, you know? So you get so far, and then I mean, like going down this path is like going west. You know, you get so far, and you're like, oh my God, I got to burn my piano because I'm cold and I don't have any money. And like, do I want to keep going over that mountain, or does this place look nice?
Right.
You know what I mean? And,
right. Right.
You know, I mean, I might die over there. You know, when the when the Blackfoot. I got to go buy them, you know, I'm not going to get buy them at all, and I might not.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm making the analogy.
The options become less and less and less, and you have to give more and more and more and get over the smaller...
Not even the effort. You have to give up.
Yeah, right.
You know, you have to say, there's so many things you can't...
Sure.
You can't do both.
Right.
You have to try. And in our case, I mean, we tried, and I mean, I'm going to give us a little credit that we succeeded.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, you know, we both have families, and we're able to make that sustainable and do what we do. You know, in a small market. You know, now certainly not in a major market like a New York, Nashville, or L.A. So, and there's a way to do this, and I'm kind of that's a lot of reason what I wanted to do with this. Podcast was just, we have all these guys, and they all have all these stories of ways that they've kind of made it work, you know? And like last week I did a session with Down to Sound Mind with Dan and Barb, and it's funny, like Barb is a New York producer moving to Spain, you know, and Barb has like such a different story than mine, you know, but at the same time, so much of it was the same. You know, you could just sit and go for like half an hour and just be laughing at, you know, or Dan would be very much like you. Oh, you know, and just the way he looks at audio and the way, you know, and what he does and what he put together, and he has a studio like this one, and it's just funny. It's the same tale. Yeah, it's just the same tale no matter where you go.
It's like super comforting to me. If you like ever meet somebody, I mean, like at like a trade convention, it's kind of a given that all the nerds are there, you know, including like Stevie Wonder nerd, like of the highest order. And but if you meet somebody just kind of casually, or you're going like, or I visited on vacation, I visited a studio, and you walk in and it's like you're just grabbing coffee and you're just starting to talk. There's like no uncomfortability, or it's the exact same language, the exact same production language, all the same issues, all the same joys, all the same, you know, breaking of things.
Heartbreak.
You know, heartbreak and gear break and all the breaks.
Yeah, all the breaks. But I just I had another point about that. I can't remember. But I was when you were talking about adolescence, this little left turn, you were saying how it's like an adolescent thing to be in the arts and whatnot. And there was like one of the last albums that George Martin made was they were doing Beatles covers, and they had like all these I can't even remember. You have to look it up. Okay. But anyway, once again, I didn't plan on talking about him all today. I'm going to mention him twice. Jim Carrey was on it. Oh. And he was like singing like "I Am the Walrus" or something.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was this album they were making of people doing covers of Beatles songs.
Oh, wow. But I vaguely remember
but George Martin was producing it.
Okay.
And I remember like Jim Carrey saying, you know, I'm looking at this old man, but he's a child.
Right.
You know?
Right.
He said, he's like, and we're going to go in the he and the who and the, you know what I mean? And he's like so into it.
Yeah.
And it's infectious. Yeah. You know, it's infectious to be in a room with somebody like that.
Right.
And that's what makes it so great, and all that kind of, just to be with somebody that's that in their own zone and
can express high level thoughts like really easily. Yeah. And it's a conversation, and it's not, you know. Yeah, it's almost like a musical conversation, the production itself, in the best cases of this, you know, thing that's happening.
Right.
Because then you're kind of getting there. Yeah, it's amazing to see.
I just, I've said it in other podcasts, just saying, like when you sit in a room with a really good producer or a great producer, they never look like they're doing anything. Right. They're just sitting there, you know, and then hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this?
Right.
You know?
Right. I had the thought, I am obsessed with like the color of audio and that kind of stuff. And I just had the thought for the first time, I don't know why, I was sitting there listening to, it wasn't whether I was listening to that Blue Oyster Cult record yesterday. Right. It was listening to one of, I think the thing we recorded the other day, the demo. And I was like, Brian Wilson was deaf in one ear.
Yeah, he was.
And he can hear the spectrum front to back as if you were looking at an orchestra, his own weird orchestra. And he understands the sonics of the instruments, of the melodies, to do all of the editing up front by careful and inspired arrangement to do those things. And it doesn't need to be stereo or Atmos or anything. You're building something that exists in this magical plane of waves, and you know, that's the top of the heap that he could do that. Like he used to tell a story. I remember you talking about, like Brian Wilson had this engineer, you know, and he had kind of like come into Brian's studio. He was kind of the new guy, and he started working with Brian, and he he's first time he's recording something, Brian would start singing this note, and this guy's like, oh man, like that's not in this change. That is not in this change. Is this in this key?
It'd be like the
he's like
13th of the chord.
Yeah, he was singing like the 13th.
Yeah.
And then he was building a swell and this kind of thing, and the guy was like, okay,
what just happened? Yeah. Because most people, build it from the ground up. You start with the root.
Yeah, most mortals are like, I understand root, third, fifth, and then
maybe I can put a dominant seventh in it, or whatever I want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like melding.
I'm going to start with these other notes and then work my way backwards.
Yeah,
that's like an understanding of. Did you ever see that show? This is a different analogy, but what was that show? What's his name? Jeff Daniels, The Newsroom.
Oh yeah, The Newsroom.
There's that famous sort of like he's at some sort of conference and he's as the sorority girl and he has this whole monologue about how America, all these things. But and then somebody said, "Well, you're ready to do this?" He goes, "Yeah, man, I'm ready to do it." He said, "Are you sure?" Director, whoever it was, he said, and he read the whole thing backwards. He's like, "Yeah, I'm ready." Yeah, read it all completely backwards.
Wow.
Yeah, like just like he was prepped.
Yeah. I'm prepped.
Yeah, like they know it inside and out, and they can kind of just recover. Or, I don't know. It's just a level of understanding.
This is
not like muscle memory almost.
That's the thing I was going to say is that that's you're not able to get. That thing about 10,000 hours it's exactly right. That gets to the starting line. So then when you're at the starting line of understanding what the thing is that you're doing, you have to have that muscle memory over and over and different versions of it in your tool bag of brushes to do actual thoughts and not mechanics. And it's so hard to get past mechanics sometimes, to get to the thought, to get to the thing. And when everything lines up, it's magical. There's thousands and thousands of great, magical, perfect examples from Etta Fitzgerald on whoever. And so that's the thing that takes all of your life.
Sure.
That's if you really, really, really like it.
Yeah, if you really want to learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not fortunate or unfortunate. It is. That's kind of what it is. And you don't really think about it too much. Although, when another tax bill comes, sometimes you're like,
well, then you think about it.
Then you think about it immediately.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done this.
I shouldn't have done this.
I'm in error. I'm in error.
Maybe. I don't know.
No, I think
I just really my thought process was for this particular conversation was just more or less to kind of talk about just that Western expansion, that migrating from the beginning to the end, like you're trying to get to the Pacific Ocean, or whatever, and what makes you go, what makes you go in the first place, what makes you keep going, and where do you stop, and what maybe along the way I want to talk about next. We have this almost 40-year journey. Like what would you have done differently? You know what I mean? Or along the way specifically, that's really what all this is about. And all those things, some people, are more comfortable with staying where they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with however you decide to do it. But if you're going to go out, I mean, it's just one of those things that, you don't want to get to the end of if it's something you really, really want to do and it nags you every day of your life for 30 years, you probably should have, or maybe still should try to move down the line in some way that won't leave you, sleeping in a car or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, whether it be the arts or whatever you want to do.
Right.
Have an Etsy shop.
Right. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. I think you should probably do that because you can just in your mind stop yourself from even starting.
Yeah, with my with the what am I afraid of thing, it's like it's
I like
hard.
that. I like that. That's good. I know that's
the very nature of taking action on something like over and over and over is that there's going to be, it's messy, it's just not, it's uncomfortable. It creates uncomfortable situations or whatever, just in terms of the ups and downs of touring, the ups and downs of money, the ups and downs of this. But,
right.
On average, you're getting better and better. You're always getting better and better at what you're doing.
Yeah.
The circumstances of your life and what's surrounded kind of actually come and go around this thing. That's what it feels like, at least to me. But yeah.
I saw this little reel interview with, what's the comedian? Gaffigan?
Jim Gaffigan?
Yeah. Yeah. And he kind of had this point where he just said, he said, I think anybody that, whether it be in the entertainment field, I mean, he's a comic,
mm-hmm.
And, musician, entertainer, actor, whatever. So they feel like at some point in their life, they're going to be taken down a hallway to the room where everybody is. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it exactly like he said it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have arrived and all, everything you need is going to be right there.
Right.
And that room, you're going to get to that room if you just keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
He said, it doesn't work that way. You never really get there.
Right.
You never really, even when you're really, 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 really successful, we were never on that level of success, but we'd had more successful years than others.
Right.
Excuse me. And it didn't really feel any different to me.
Yeah.
To me, it wasn't like, tear in my eye. To me, I didn't feel that way. It always bugged me watching, like, the X Factor or American Idol or something, and there's just that narrative around all these people and that kind of, and most, it doesn't have to be a music show, these weight loss shows or cooking competitions or something, and it's just kind of like around this, like, oh man, I'm getting this one shot.
Right.
This one shot.
Right.
This one shot for my dream.
Yeah.
And this is all the marbles. This is all the marbles. And here's my horrible story that led me to here.
Yeah.
We all have horrible stories that led us to
here. Yeah.
And I want to hear the guy that says, what are you going to do if you don't win or something? And I want him to say, well, I have a gig on Tuesday,
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Actually, I kind of got to get out of here.
Yeah. And I don't know. That always kind of, that all the marbles thing,
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate because it puts you, you're actually backing yourself in a corner.
Right.
Like you give yourself some latitude. You were always like really good with that. Like no matter how tough it is or whatever you're going through, it's like, what are you going to do? You go improve it, go work on it, triage, like whatever the heck it is.
Sure.
But the whole bag of marbles, that's a rough one. Cause then you're, it's like we used to, when we were at Saturation Acres, the bountiful rock icon, Saturation Acres.
Yeah.
I remember just like trying to informally like counsel bands on like, don't have the record deal as the goal. And you think that you then walk into the record deal room.
Yeah.
You don't, and it can be gone before it's even there. So just be aware it is a piece of thing along the path for musicians, and now it's completely different. If you get a record deal, I don't know what you're doing. That's insane.
Yeah.
But it's the persistence over time.
Yeah, persistence over time and kind of being able to evaluate your level of commitment. If your level of commitment is sufficient to get to where in your head you think you want to get to.
Right. And that got to be adjusted all the time.
That has to be adjusted.
Because you got to know what the actual reality is based on what you thought it was.
Yeah. What the actual reality is different. I remember one time mentioning American Idol again. Like everybody always hated Simon Cowell. I actually liked him. I liked a lot of the things he said to people. I thought it was actually
direct.
It was actually nice
and correct.
In its own way, it was fairly nice. Like he didn't belittle people.
Right.
He just told them they sucked.
Right.
Which most of the time they did.
Right.
But I remember one time, there was just one time in particular I was watching, and this girl came up and she sang, and she was okay. She was genuinely okay.
Yeah.
And he said, he got to the end of it, and she was, she's going home, whatever the case may be. And he said, well, I really want you to know, he said, I know you're standing up there and you feel bad and you feel like you blew an opportunity, but you didn't.
This was never an opportunity.
It wasn't going to happen.
No, you're right.
You know,
right.
It wasn't going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen. I can tell you right now, I've been doing this my whole life. It's not going to happen for you.
Right.
You know, and I'm telling you now at 22.
Yeah. And what the social contract is of happen is this big, huge bump.
Yeah.
So you go out into the public and there's a lot of money and there's a lot of exposure.
And you get to go to the room where all the people are sitting that solve all your problems.
Yeah. The point is that is a thing that is a rare sub 1% thing.
Yeah.
It is not a normal thing.
No.
And the normal thing is if you really love it and you're average, no one cares. You make it your joy. And by the way, if you're angry enough to write some really wild stories, you might actually become relevant. It doesn't, you know, because you're not talented to be a superstar. So superstar shouldn't be a thing, you know. That should be this bit that happens, the pop after all the stuff happens.
That's what
it's not. That it's a symptom of what all of this work and publicity is.
Yeah, people love hits.
People love hits.
You know,
I love hits.
I do too. You know, I mean, people love hits. They want hits. They want big.
Yes. So
rockets into space.
Your participation in that hit world may be very limited.
Yeah.
But that's not the only world or path there is. Like we said, there's a million things.
There's lots of things you could do. Yeah. And I always said that too. You know, you can go down to the smallest little town in any state in the country, you know, and find a great little restaurant or a little diner or a little place, you know, that just as good as anything, you know, that's just they're there and that's where they want to be, and hopefully that's where they want to be, you know, and you know, that doesn't, the skill part of it is, you know, is the actual skill and ability part of it is, you know, that much of it, you know, it's just a matter of the rest of the things. Are you willing to?
Right.
You know,
and
are you willing to go through that? And I think, you know, we're talking about musicians and the arts and things like that, but I think it's kind of true for any job, you know, any career choice. You know, I mean, if you want to, you know, what's that guy's name? I listened to online. I'm not going to remember, but anyhow, he, Scott Galloway, something like that. Oh, you know who he is?
Yeah.
And he was talking about, like, well, you know, make your way to a city, find yourself, you know, find a job that has a 90% employment rate. And he's just kind of really talking about, like, people that are competent professionals that want to have a normal life.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And then you have to decide, I'm like, if you're one of those 1%ers that's willing to do all the things and has the ability, and is willing to walk through fire for decades, you know, then you can, you know, do that. But most people want to go to work and then come home and forget about it. Yeah, a lot of people do. Maybe not most. I don't know what the statistic is.
Well, but, many people.
You know, and I know a lot of my family and whatnot. You know, they want to you know, they want to do their job, then they want to come home and relax.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I know myself, I never shut off.
No, you know, it's that's the other thing. It's a 24/7 kind of situation.
You know, and then it's kind of like, okay, well, you're looking ahead and you're planning, and it makes for a much more sane life, because most of the time over the years, you know, your 401k does go up, you know, and you know what I mean, and you do make a little more money, and most times if it's a big company, it doesn't go south, you know, but you know, there are earthquakes and volcanoes and explosions and all sorts of things, but you know, the well-worn path does usually slowly trend upward,
and it's incremental. And that needs to be.
Whereas, you know, we're like, you know, this job is like,
you know,
that
was amazing the next day.
Oh my God. So so that's you know, that's, I mean, we kind of went through the whole philosophical stuff, and maybe we can wind down just by talk. I just want to talk about, like, okay, from the beginning, give me some things that maybe along the way while we're doing this, like, you wish we or you or whatever would have kind of done a little differently, or you kind of looked at it the wrong way because you didn't know any. In our case, it was almost always we didn't know any better.
It was mostly we didn't know any better. I mean, for me personally, I wish I would have been able to like get out of my head to understand more, I guess, how I could contribute in more lyrical ways. That would be my, which I think, I don't want to like say I ever did a job that was not effective or musical or anything. But at the same time, you always, I wish I would have listened to over and over all of the hero arranger people, bass players that would make songs great, and you're kind of in your own head and you're like, I'm doing this like me. It's almost like a little punk ethos. It's not an educational ethos. And so then it ended up being what it was. But then I'm perfectly happy with having experienced that. But if I would have changed something, it would have been to learn how to be, more open or better earlier.
Yeah, well, I think some of that too, is a little bit of a function of where we were and where we did it.
True.
Because we had to do it ourselves because there wasn't anybody around that could do it for us at the time.
Right.
Or anybody that was, by the time we were into making records, there wasn't anybody that knew more than us. We could go to somebody different. Yeah, we could go to somebody else and pay them to do the same thing.
Right. Right.
But there wasn't somebody exponentially
better than us,
around here.
Yeah, around here.
I mean, maybe somebody had better preamps or better gear.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, there weren't. We didn't have. Neil Young hanging out in Sunbury that I could go over and talk to him about my songs.
Exactly.
Things like that. So you're kind of writing them and putting them out there, But
the experiment of learning how effective that was for an audience person listening to your stuff and you is a long cycle. We're months and months and months.
Yeah.
And so you're learning with these record cycles, which everybody does, but in some ways it's great that it takes a long time to do that. But other ways it's like, really wish we could have.
That's what I thought. I've said that before. It was, these guys that get into maybe like an apprenticeship situation or an internship situation when there were studios. Like there's not studios. Like everybody just has one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like all the big places are owned by
private
stars.
Stars and
Stevie Wonder.
Exactly.
Successful
musicians.
Successful musicians, players, producers own these places now.
Yeah.
So so it's not like it's open to the public and there's this cattle call of people that are coming and going. So I think that it's a little bit easier when you have really great stuff, kind of what I want to say, curated by somebody that knows the best of the best, puts it all together, and you can observe that guy.
Yes.
That makes a big difference.
Yes.
And that means, and from a business standpoint too, I mean, mentors are very, very important. One time I was in a conversation at a gig there was this guy. I don't remember who the guy was, and a woman that were talking to me, and the woman was Laura Slocum.
Oh, okay, Laura Slocum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out, Laura.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember her saying she took the attitude of if she had this sort of, if it's supposed to happen, it will.
Right.
Attitude.
Right.
About life in general.
Right.
Which,
it's good.
Yeah, that's a good one. You know what I mean? But his attitude was, no, you got to make it happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you got to make these things happen. And this kind of thing is like, well, okay, well, if you're inclined and you have the ability and you have the temperament and all those things, yeah, you can make things happen. Mm-hmm. That someone that's not inclined, mm-hmm. doesn't have the temperament, doesn't have the ability, mm-hmm. you know what I mean? It's mm-hmm. never going to happen for them, no matter how hard they work. Mm-hmm. It's like work versus, mm-hmm. nature versus nurture, I guess, mm-hmm. or nurture versus nature.
Yeah.
But then the guy like asked me, said, well, what would you change? Like about your path or whatever, And I said, the main thing I would change for me which had nothing to do with anybody in our circle doing anything wrong, was I said, when the world turned around, I would want more people in my corner that had been there before.
Right.
You know, which is basically mentorship.
Mentorship.
I would have wanted to have loads of experience.
Yeah.
I would have wanted to already be that thing.
Right.
When I actually became that thing.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and that wasn't the case. It was kind of like all of a sudden you're getting thrown in this whole new thing. And, you know, in that world doesn't turn around too often. Then you got to find a new path.
Right.
You know, and they don't turn around for long sometimes.
Right.
You know, so you have to be ready. So there was a lot of that. For me, that was one regret. For me, the other thing was, I think there were like it was always kind of like you wanted to work harder. Like it's not even work smarter. It's just like for me, there's times, you know, maybe there was. It's just natural human nature. You get too caught up in the palace intrigue of the gig,
right,
and just the career and all these surrounding characters, and you don't spend as much time just
on the thing,
just cranking.
Yeah, the culture.
And we cranked out piles and piles of stuff.
Right.
You know,
right.
To our credit, but you know, I mean, way more than most.
Way more than most. There's a lot of records.
A lot of records, and I mean that you and I either played on or produced or engineered or with one of our bands. Just tons of output, but I even say there should have been more. You know,
right.
You get yourself all caught up in like, well, we're going to do this, then this is going to happen, then we're going to do this, and this is going to happen, and you know maybe it would have been better. I think over time when we just put our head down and did it,
which is relevant to you. It has to be a cross section of those two things, and that's where the guiding mentor thing. The person who understands what this whole thing is, not completely, but they've been through it.
Yeah.
They are good at what they do, and they can bring you along with it and give you advice. So you can make those things that, you know, promotional things to this thing or whatever the thing is you're going after, to make those quick decisions and not have to labor over this thing and what ifs.
Right.
And so then you can do that but when you have to play both sides of you know, you're your own mentor is very difficult to do. It's like being your own producer. You know, some people are brilliant, and again, this is sub 1%ers, is there needs to be a conversation and there needs to be an outside, it's not just being subjective. It is subjective in a way where sometimes you can't see the thing that is the best about you, or something that is better than what you're trying to do. And somebody sitting next to you who understands kind of the whole scope in a different way is going to be able to say, hey, you know, you do this thing, you know, I know you want to do something different, but like do that thing on this, you know, you don't, let's try to, you know, and that when you have to do that for yourself, even though there were 5 of us, you're still subjective, you know. Yeah. It's hard to do that.
Yeah, that, you know, you're walking down this
level, you know.
You're walking down this road, you know what I mean, and then you got a guy that can go, nope. 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 You know, just kind of
up, easy.
Yeah. Get back in.
Excuse me, is that your bass player? He's out of the cage. Okay, get that guy back in. Like, no, seriously. Your drummer I saw your drummer like out in the parking lot running around like a chicken.
Get back in here.
Get him back in.
Get back to work. Yeah. And just the discipline of that, or the. And maybe discipline isn't the word. Just kind of just being mentored, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of in my world, you know, the feeling is just kind of maybe you could have. We did a lot of things right, and you know, if we started from where we are now and we were heading west, you know, we kind of made it to Colorado, I think.
I feel like we made it a solid. Did we like start to go up that peak and? Kind of slide back down. We landed in a really cool town, though. I mean, I don't know, but yeah. So, I don't know whether we're Colorado hippies or not. I don't think so. Yeah, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see.
We will see.
But that, I mean, I think that that's not bad, and that's a good analogy for how this all works. And you know, I mean, if you're a person that you want to do it, it's just kind of like along the way. You know, every step of the way, it's kind of like, do I want to keep going?
Yeah.
Find yourself some good mentors along the way. Focus on the work.
Focus on the work.
Focus on the work.
Yeah.
Find people, you know, and people are willing to help you.
Yeah.
You know, that's another thing is like, you know, you ask people questions sincerely. You say, you know, look, this is what I want to do. How do I do it for real?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, and people are usually willing to talk to you that have done this before.
They are. And even people that are extremely successful.
Are willing to help somebody that wants to learn, no matter what it is, no matter what it is you want to do. If you want to be a whatever, lawyer, accountant, Indian chief.
Yeah. I mean, and that is really difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is. But anyhow, you know, I think there's just you know, just kind of keep stepping down the line. Decide when you want to drill your stake into the ground.
True.
And ask questions.
Yeah. Yep. That really is. Honestly, that should be, man, this podcast goes in many directions. Mentorship actually is the word.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because you're never going to get to prepare without that kind of thing.
Nope.
We've had to be each other's, foils, but like mentors too, just sounding boards. I at least feel really grateful to have had that because, you know, if you're just on your own and you don't have somebody you've been around for 35 years, you know, with shared experiences, doesn't really matter what. You don't really have to say a lot.
They can't take, you know? Like, I mean, you have unbelievable tools to get information online, but it can't really spit out it could give you 6 choices, but it can't really tell you which one is best for you based on
who you are.
Something that you haven't mentioned.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like, so, you know, that's the
yep.
That's the human contact side of it.
Right.
You know, that's the beauty of that. If it's like, I know you, and and that's right. You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's invaluable. Whether that be coming from your parents, you know, your folks, or your siblings, or your friends, or your coworkers, or wherever that's coming from. That's valuable stuff.
Yep. You have to find your tribe. I just watched this interview with Sarah Sherman from.
Oh, I love her.
She's the best. You know, and she right away, you know, she's from Long Island, and she was talking with another guy on this podcast about being from Long Island, you know, which according to Sarah is like the worst. But she found these like anime freak kids and the art freak kids in the basement of the library in her town. And so, you know, that kind of thing, you have to find your tribe. You do have to find your tribe. It's a lot easier if you have at least people going in the same direction or with the same types of likes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were lucky. We were like a little football team.
Yep. Yeah. There you go. Let's call it. There we go.
Boom. 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 Boom.
This podcast was produced by Stone State Entertainment.